Yes, we can start.
So, hi everyone. Hi Quan and Kavya, and thank you for joining us from Australia today. So, I'd like to give a brief introduction about the Indian Genetic Counselling Journal Club and kind of explain our motto and why we are starting this segment. So, we, me, Sukriti, and Shraddha, we started this journal club for genetic counseling to create a space for students and individuals who might be interested in genetic counseling from India to interact and kind of get a platform where they can discuss what genetic counseling, discuss papers, discuss the process of getting into the field and learn from the experts who are already working or pursuing education in this field, and basically to create awareness about genetic counseling in India among students and to be advocates for students who might be looking to get into the field and create a platform where they can reach out to people and network. As this is a very niche and budding field in India, and considering India, there are a lot of challenges that come when you are wanting to get into a niche field like genetic counseling. So, thank you, Quan and Kavya, for joining us today. I hope our audience who might watch this recorded session will gain insights about genetic counseling in Australia, and people who might be interested might get their question answered. So, thank you for taking out time and joining us. I know it's kind of an odd hour in Australia, like 9. So, really, thank you. I would like to introduce Shraddha, who is our team member, to introduce Quan. So, to give a brief introduction about Kavya Zaveri, she has completed her BS from KC College in Biotechnology from Mumbai, and then she went on to pursue a postgraduate diploma course in bioinformatics from St. Xavier's College, Mumbai. And she's currently a student at UTS, and she's pursuing MS in genetic counseling. And so, hi, well, we welcome you, Kavya, and we are keen to learning from you and hearing more from you.
Okay, so thank you both of you for giving that introduction. And you were saying something, Kavya, sorry.
No, I just was asking if there was a question to me or that was like the end.
No, there was just an introduction. So the questions will begin now. And the first question that I have for both of you is just a very basic thing. So, how did you come to know about genetic counseling as a profession? How was your journey for it?
Quan, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I guess I first knew about genetic counseling during A levels. So I did A levels after high school, and biology was one of the subjects that I took. And if I'm not wrong, there was one, I guess, part of the subject that talked very briefly about genetic counseling. So honestly, at that time, I didn't know too much about what that was or what it entails, but it kind of just stuck in my mind that that was something which was possible as a profession because I was interested in pursuing genetics for uni. And I think I got to know more about genetic counseling during my undergrad because I did different placements or internships or whatever you call it in different areas just to suss out what worked for me and what did not. And one of the internships that I did was with a genetic testing company with a genetic counselor working there as well. So I got to sort of have a taste of what genetic counseling is. So I guess that was really how I started to know a bit more about genetic counseling. Yeah.
Okay, so Kavya.
Mine's a bit roundabout. So when I did my A levels, I did psychology, and I was pretty sure that I wanted to do something psychology related. But then I went on to do my undergrad in um, biotech because again A levels psychology was at a different time, and biology and all the other subjects you give exams at different times. So I couldn't get into a course with psychology, so I ended up doing biotech, which really worked out because we learned about genetic engineering. And I remember in one of our seminars that we had about genetic engineering, they mentioned genetic counseling. And I was like, that sounds interesting. Those two words don't go together. And then when I went ahead, researched about it, asked my professors, they're like, it is an actual field. And it was for me, it just clicked because it was perfect. It was psychology. There was a lot of interaction with people. It was biology and genetics, something that I really loved. So just two things really sat together. And that's how I came across genetic counseling. Yeah.
That's that's great. That okay. So we can the next question.
Thank you so much for sharing your motivations behind pursuing genetic counseling, or how did you discover it? So, like this was your journey discovering genetic counseling. So, you both are international students who are currently in Australia. So, what is the status of genetic counseling as a profession or as a field in your home country? And did you get an opportunity to interact with genetic counselors in your home country?
Um, you guys would know better about genetic counseling in India since you guys are there. So, but when I was starting out in 2020, I don't think it was that much well known, or there were a lot of places where I could get a lot of resources. I've searched, and there were only, I think, the Law Institute was doing it, and there was Manipal, if I'm not wrong, offering, or Kasturba, um, which were like two or three places offering just 1 year post grad diploma, and there was not a proper master's course or something. So I think it's on the up and it's on the rise right now. I did not get a chance to talk to a genetic counselor back home, but I did manage to speak to someone in the US who did practice in India for a bit, and then they shifted over there because they'd studied there and they got a better opportunity there. But yeah, so that's, I think you'd also know better in India at this point.
So I guess for Malaysia, obviously our country is much, much smaller compared to India. So we have a population of about 32 million. And if I'm not wrong, as of now, we have about, I'd say, more or less 10 genetic counselors for the whole country, which is not a lot at all. So obviously, it is a growing field. So there are more genetic tests that are being ordered in different settings, be it in cancer, in pediatrics, reproductive genetics. So it is definitely a growing field, and there is definitely a demand for more genetic counselors. So I think in 2015 or 2016, the National University of Malaysia did introduce a master's course in genetic counseling. So the whole point of that is to train more local genetic counselors. But I think the other problem that, well, not problem, the other challenge that we face as a country is that genetic counselors are not yet recognized as a formal profession in the public health system. So in 2019, the Genetic Counselling Society of Malaysia was formed, and the main goal that they are trying to work towards throughout these few years is really to try and push to have formal positions for genetic counselors in the public health sector. So I guess in a nutshell, I'd say there are genetic counselors working in Malaysia, not enough. There are more coming up, but yeah, there are still lots to do to catch up with, countries like the US, UK, and Australia.
Quan and mute, I'm gonna let him go.
Or I can speak. You can jump in whenever. So for me, so where I worked previously in Cancer Research Malaysia, two of the GCs there that sort of supervised me both were Australian trained. So I guess it was kind of a no-brainer for me just because I was trained under them and they had, the same training. And it just made sense because they knew the ins and outs of the Australian postgrad training system. So I got a lot of advice from them, and I guess it just sort of built from there. Yeah, I don't really have a sophisticated answer, to be honest. I don't know if Kavya has one.
No, not really. I did not. Australia was not a no-brainer for me. I did look at other countries. I looked at the US, Canada, and UK. And the main sort of not setback, but what deterred me from not going to the US or Canada was their match system. And it really grates on me because you can't sort of pick the university you want to go to because you enter this system and you have to match with the university and the university needs to pick you as well. And each course is sort of structured differently and meets different needs. And I just didn't see the value in investing hundreds of dollars in applications and not getting through, and not going into a university that I actually would want to go to. UK has a good system, but again, it's just very up in the air about the future. Um, and Australia is one country that I feel currently is really investing in genetic counseling and genetic research, especially with a lot of newborn screening tests and prenatal that's coming up. And also, I have family here, so that was also again a huge factor from an international student point of view. So yeah, and also it has only two courses and it has a good number of genetic counselors and it covers such a broad area of Australia and New Zealand and other countries in Asia. So I felt like they must be doing something right. And the courses are also led by very reputed people in the industry of genetic counseling. So that's one very big plus why I picked Australia.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, when you said about you looking into the US, so at one point I did look into the courses there as well. And I think another thing that sort of deterred me from applying there was the prerequisites in the US. So first of all, it differs from uni to uni. So each uni sort of has a different prerequisite in terms of the courses or the subjects that you need to have done. So some would need you to do like a full course on embryology, and then some others would need like biochemistry, and it's just very different. So in order to meet that criteria alone is already a hurdle for a lot of people, including myself, especially if you did not study in the US prior to that. So I guess that was another factor.
Right. So our next question is actually about the prerequisites itself. So for applying to Australian universities, and so were there any prerequisites for you to apply, and how did you work on those, if there were any, for the courses that you're in right now?
I would assume both unis are the same, but Kavya, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So I think the main prerequisite that we had was obviously number one, you must have taken some sort of genetics subject or module.
Yep.
And that I think has to be relevant within the last 5 years or something like that. So if you have taken a genetics subject, say 10 years ago, just because how fast things are moving with genetics, they do require you to have more up-to-date knowledge. And I do know people who studied, say, more than 5 years ago, and how they get around that is some of them just sign up for short courses. Some of them, I know someone who bought a book from Amazon and just studied herself. So that's one prerequisite. And I think the other prerequisite, which is very important, is the experience of having a caring role. And I think it's something like having 6 months equivalent of a caring role experience. So that can be things like volunteering in school for children with special needs, volunteering for a crisis hotline. For my case, I was pretty lucky because I was already working in a genetic counseling setting. So I had that. So that counted towards my experience. But yeah, what was your experience?
Very similar. I think they fall under the genetic counseling governing body. So they're very similar, but the only difference was that we didn't have set standards. Like you need to be, you need to have a carer role in the past 6 months or for 6 months. You can have differing types of roles that you've done, because I know people in my course, someone's volunteered, someone's a teacher. Myself, I was a tutor, and that counted as my caring role. So it just depends. I think they try to gauge who you are in the interview, and I think yes, you need to sort of meet those prerequisites as a tick box, but it's also more about who you are and how you fit as a person into the course.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And when compared to the US and UK, these prerequisites quite sound like very straightforward and very uniform. But as an international student, did you face any challenges during the application process? And how was the application process for you? Kavya,
Um,
we can start with you.
yeah, it was pretty straightforward. There was no sort of hurdle. It's pretty straight. Like you go to the site, you see it, you apply, you submit your documents, and then sort of go from there. I'm not sure if Quan's had a different experience, but yeah.
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty much straightforward. And I'd also say that I guess any challenges that anyone face with regards to applying, I feel like it's the same whether it's a domestic student or an international student. So it's the same application process.
Yeah.
So I feel like as an international student per se, there's no different. We don't face different sorts of challenges or things like that.
Yeah. I also want to add that there were also better scholarship options in Australia compared to the US. That was also another big factor.
I don't have a sophisticated answer for this. Do you, Kavya?
No, um, I'm going to be very biased and say I like you. I like the way UTS approaches. I don't know how Melbourne does it at all, so I won't comment on that. But I really like how UTS approaches the entire course. There is no competitiveness whatsoever. Our class, our cohort is very, very. We get along very well. We'll share everything with each other. There is no sense of like, I won't tell you this and I won't tell you that. We're all very open, and I think it's very much facilitated by our tutors and our teachers, and they really push the point that we don't care what you do academically. We care that you're learning over here and you're taking on the skills. And it's a very low pressure environment where you can actually learn better. And also, UTS has a blended module which is different to UniMel, where our classes are usually online. So my cohort is mixed up with students in Singapore, New Zealand, and all over Australia. And usually our classes are online, and we have times in each semester where we come down to Sydney and attend uni together for the week. So I think it was very important, especially after COVID, for me to be like I need to be very adept in telehealth as well. So just having that comfort doing counseling online was another, I think, factor that was like, okay, UTS sounds better, but again, I don't know how Melbourne does it, so can't really comment.
Yeah, I think one factor that a lot of people definitely weigh in on is the fact that UTS does a blended learning approach. So that might attract some people and might put off some people. So it depends what you like. For me, honestly, the reason why I went to UniMelb in the first place was because I was quite tight on timing with visa. So like a student visa coming here and all of that. So I applied to both unis, and UniMelb coincidentally was the first one that got back to me. So I just got that process going. So it wasn't, to be honest, it wasn't like I had a checklist that I needed to take to choose between the two. I just went with the one that came back to me first because I was kind of tight with timeline. But yeah, obviously, UniMelb is they do most classes face to face, and that might be a bit different from how UTS does it. But again, there are pros and cons to both. And I think as a genetic counselor, especially now, like Kavya said, after COVID, you have to be adaptable to telehealth, but also to in-person sessions. So yeah.
That's true. I completely agree with the telehealth factor that you brought up, Kavya. Okay. So both of your universities, so how did you feel that they supported you as international students during the entire application process?
I guess, like I said, in terms of the application process, I feel like it's the same for, whether you're international or whether you're domestic. So I don't know things there. I guess in terms of support more broadly, obviously there are supports from the uni for things like visa applications. If you need to find accommodation, settling it, setting up your bank accounts, all that kind of stuff. And I'm pretty sure it's the same with UTS as well. So in terms of the application itself, I don't think there's much of a difference, the fact that we are international students. But in terms of settling into a new country, then yes, there's always support available.
Yeah, I agree. With the application process itself, there is nothing different that they did for me, or I like Quan said for him. It's pretty much standard for everyone. But once you get going, and if you have any issues setting up just with the online stuff or things that the university requires or you might require in the country, they're very helpful with that. Like there are places you can call, and like your email will be filled with all these messages, attend this and attend that. It's annoying, but they're very present.
Hmm.
That's good to know, because having support from your university in a foreign country, it does matter a lot. So how was the course structure? Like you mentioned, there was a blended approach in UTS and UML had a bit different approach. So how is the course structure at UML and also at UTS, considering the theoretical part of genetic counseling and the clinical rotations? So how are they divided, and what would you like to talk about that?
Do you want to go first?
Um, I actually don't know how to concise what I have to say. I will try. So like I said, we do most of things online, but the way I don't know if Melbourne does the same, but the way UTS approaches it is that before every week of class, so we have different subjects each semester, but we have a placement subject. The last two, like this semester and the last semester, we had a research subject where it's actually the research that we're doing, and we'll like produce a thesis or a manuscript or whatever everyone's research is. And there's a genetic subject and there's a counseling subject. So these are the four core subjects that we have throughout the 2 years. The counseling subject is more for all of the subjects. If you have any reading to do, they release it like a week prior. You do reading before class, so you go through the modules. um, it's on a, what do you say, it's on Canvas, so UTS uses Canvas. So it's on Canvas, they'll release the modules, you do that, and those modules are also very interactive. You have Padlets where you answer, you have mood boards which you make, you have like question answers going on, so it's very interactive. There are papers there that you have to read. So you do pre-work before class, and then you have class for 2 hours where you discuss the work, and then we do a lot of role plays in class where they give us scenarios, put us in breakout rooms, and we're doing role plays for half the class and then discuss. So with the counseling, each class sort of um, explores different skill sets. You'll have active listening, you'll have resilience, you'll have open questions, different things that you focus on. And then genetics, again, you do the pre-work, come to class, you'll discuss that, they'll explain that a little bit more. Um, the only thing that I think is very valuable is when we come in person to uni, we have a day where they actually call actors, and we have a simulation day. So we have these actors coming in, and just before we sit in with these actors, we are given scenarios. So you have to sit, you're paired up, you co-counsel, and it's like a real setup. And it just feels very, very, very real life, and it gives you like a lot. It gives you a safe space that you can apply your skills to, and it's not your friend, so you know this person's not going to go easy on you, and you can't laugh at this person and have like, oh, like let's not do this anymore. So it's really nice. And the placements, also another very good thing is we get to have placements anywhere we like. I have a classmate going to Ireland for her last placement. I have another one going to London. So they're very, very easy and flexible with that. If you tell them, this is where I want to go, this is what I want to do, they will try their best to facilitate that. And I think I've had placement. I'm on my third placement, and I've seen 3 different specialties. So they try to give you like a very broad and like well-rounded approach to that. I've tried my best to keep it short. I'll let Quan go.
I think that was amazing. So I guess for us, a few similarities. So we use Canvas as well, and we so they also release the modules a week before the actual in-person tutorials, or in-person or online, depending. But they release it a week prior, and same thing. So there are papers that you have to go through. There are interactive, quizzes or whatever not. So I guess for Melbourne, to sum it up, every year we have 2 semesters. So for first year, the subjects include genetics, counseling, genetic counseling, and I guess like an ethics subject. So for first year, it's mostly getting used to these sort of ideas, because some people that come into the course have no prior counseling experience, or some people that come into the course don't have too much of a genetics experience. So they sort of, the first semester is really trying to get everyone up to speed where they should be. And then second semester, it's still pretty much the same subjects, but a bit more advanced. So there's a lot more skills practice and real life scenarios and things like that. And then towards the end of first year, we get to do observations in clinics, in a chosen clinic in Melbourne. And we also start engaging with our research supervisors to sort of, I guess, come up with a research topic. And then in second year, we have placements, so clinical placements that we have to do twice. How do I put it? So it's twice a year, but each placement is in a block of 24 days, I think. Yeah, 24 days. And then besides that, you also have research going on, and you also have the usual classes going on. So for us, I guess the main difference is the timing of our placements. So mine is mainly in second year, so throughout second year, whereas I think UTS starts a bit earlier. And I think our research really starts in second year as well. So it's throughout the whole of second year, whereas UTS also starts a bit earlier. But I think in terms of the subjects, it's pretty much similar because, again, like the two courses are based on the requirements of the same board that governs these courses.
Yeah, like Quan said, like it's very similar in the subjects that they teach. The only difference is the timing. So you have placements all 4 semesters, and I think they have placements later in the year where they actually interact and start to engage more. And even with the way Quan said it, correct me if I'm wrong, but with our research projects, we are given a research project. So we submit, so it's a bit like a mix and match. Like you submit your interests, you submit your field of interest, and you submit the type of research project that you'd want to do. So all throughout the first first semester rather, they will teach you the different types of research, quant, all of those. And then towards the end, you fill out this very comprehensive form which tells you what research you want to do, what is your first preference, what topic, which area you want to do the research in, and then they give you 3 options of ongoing research projects or projects that people actually want to do, and then you sort of pick like I want to do this, I want to do this, and then it sort of matches with what you want to do. If yeah, and if you come up with your own project.
Well, so I guess ours is pretty similar as well in the sense that at the end of first year, so the research coordinator would have engaged with different, genetic counselors or researchers that want a master's student involved in their research project. So they would have a list of, I don't know, say like 50 potential research, I won't say research topics because nothing is set in stone, but research areas and the supervisor's name. So then they release it on Canvas, and then we go out there and have a look, just browse through the background of each supervisor and what their research topics are. And then similarly, we choose, I think, top 3 or top 5. And then we set up a time to talk to each of those supervisors, really just to get an idea of, whether what we had in mind is in line with what they're actually doing. And then we submit a final choice, I think like top 1, top 2 or something like that. And then they just match us with the supervisor. So in terms of the research topic, obviously it would be something around what they're doing, but it's still open to discussion. Yeah, so they're pretty flexible with that.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. Thank you for both our speakers for joining us from Australia. I know the time zone must mean that it's quite late for you. I was just curious if somebody has already done their MSc in. I was reading up I think it's the Human Society in Australia. They have some guidelines for people who have done their MSc outside of Australia but want to come to the country and practice. So if we have done it in India, do you have any idea what is the procedure if we go to Australia? Do we have to redo the 2 years? Or is there some just certification course or something?
Um, I am not too sure about this, but you can go on the HGSA website. I could send that through and you can have a little bit of a read over there. But as far as my understanding goes, you'd have to do the certification process in Australia. It takes, I think, about 2 years, where I think they're changing it now to make it a little bit shorter. But you have to go through all the prerequisites to get certified in Australia. I don't know if Quan knows anything different.
Yeah. Are you? Can I just ask? Are you BGCI certified or?
I'm sitting for the exam this year.
You're sitting for the exam. Okay. Um, I've read that document 500 times because they just released the new version the year we got into the program. So as far as I know, they have exemptions for people who are certified in the US, in the UK, in Canada. I don't think I've come across anything that talks about people certified in India. But I think there is sort of a sentence there saying if you are certified elsewhere, send them an email, and it's really a case-to-case basis. But I did have a chat with the board, I think sometime last year, and they said the reason they're doing this change is because they want to standardize the whole certification process for everyone who wants to do it under HGSA. So I'm not a part of the board, so I don't know what the answer is, but I have a feeling that they would, like Kavya said, you would need to still fulfill all of their prerequisites and things like that. And I think part of the requirement is to actually have some working experience in Australia or New Zealand. Yeah.
And I can speak from experience the way the health system works in India and in Australia. It's very different, very, very different. And it's so vast that it will take a lot of adjusting to it, because over here everything's centralized, whereas back home everything is sort of, it depends on us where we want to go, who we want to see, and like whichever doctor we want to see. Over here it's more channelized. Everything has to go through the GP. The GP says you can go, you don't get anywhere else without the GP's referral. So it's a different process. So they would definitely want you to know the health system here better. They use a standardized software and entire system that you need to know, which Quan and I learn when we go on placement. Each state has differences in the way genetic counseling is done and pursued. So that again is different. And because if you're just sitting for your exam and just getting certified, then you wouldn't have experience as a certified counselor back home either. So like Juan said, just go through the document and send them an email. They'll probably get back to you and let you know what you have to do.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Well, I guess again, I guess I was a bit fortunate because while I was applying for the course, I was already I already had a job. I already had a job, so to speak. So I guess my plan B was really to continue working on what I was doing because I was enjoying my role there as well. But also to build on whatever skills that I lacked. So, if I if I applied and if I didn't get in, chances are you could email the uni and ask for feedback and tell you what are the things that were lacking. And I did sort of had that at the back of my mind, if I was lacking, say, in counseling skills, which I was almost certain that I was because I had no counseling experience. I did have a plan in mind to sort of, say, pursue a short course back home or, things like that. Yeah.
I did not have any plan B. I sort of went in with a very biased assumption that if I had good grades in my bachelor's, because academic validation is a very big thing back home. So if you did good, if you were top of your class, you get into any university you want. It worked out. It would have been a different story if it hadn't. But yeah, I didn't have any plan B. I was like, it's very arrogant, but
Yes, so we've covered a lot of topics. So, one last thing I think from both of you we need is, do you have any advice for students who are applying right now, who want to apply to Australian universities? Just any bit of advice for them.
You want to go first?
yeah. I'd say reach out to as many people as you can. Um, talk to them, like reach out. Like we don't bite. We are really, because as a profession, genetic counseling is very teamwork, and we don't work individually. We always work in teams. So we're very good at encouraging people to come through and just pop anyone a question. Most people who are genetic counselors or studying are very good people, and they will reply to you, and they will want to help you out. So I say one big thing is, even if you're applying in the States or anywhere else, it really helps if you're talking to a student there, because they've gone through the process and they can help you a lot more. And be sure that this is what you want to do, because sometimes you think it's something and then you start doing the course and it's just something else. And it's not always easy. It's not just talking about genetics. It's like actual people's lives. So my advice would be very sure that this is what you want to do your research, and just talk to people about it, what their experience is, not just with the application, with the industry in that country, how they're finding it, what works, what doesn't work. And the application process, like one mentioned earlier, is standard for everyone. So if you're going through an agent, that makes it that much easier. But if you're doing it on your own, just ask someone or ask the university. I've learned this the hard way. Ask as many questions as you want, send as many emails to people. They get thousands anyway. One more email from you is not going to make a difference. They will either reply or not reply, but just send it.
Yeah, I can't agree more. I think networking is so important. I guess not only in the field of genetic counseling, but in general. And I feel like genetic counselors in general, no matter where they work, we are a very supportive community. That's one thing I really like about the profession. And you can really see that when you go to conferences and attend talks and things like that. So like Kavya said, definitely do reach out, send people a text through LinkedIn or reach out through email. I think that always helps. I did have a few other things on top of my mind. So the first thing was, I think a lot of people that I speak to, or a lot of students that I speak to, they always think that they need some sort of genetic counseling shadowing experience to get into the course. That is definitely not the case, because number one, we know genetic counselors are busy people. So, it's definitely impossible for everyone to get a shadowing experience. And the reason I say it's not as important is because, like Kavya said, genetic counseling is not just about talking about genetics. It's more about how you interact and respond to your clients. So that's where the caring experience comes in handy, because say if you volunteer in a crisis hotline, if you volunteer or work in a school for children with special needs, that's where you really develop your skills. So I think that's one thing. The other thing I want to say is that the field is always evolving. And even genetic counselors, like well, not ourselves because we have not graduated yet, but even practicing genetic counselors, every year you have to sort of upskill yourself. It's not like you attend the course for 2 years and then that's it. With genetics, everything changes so fast. 5 years ago, polygenic risk scores isn't a thing. It is now. And because it's still in the research setting or like moving into clinical trial, we are not taught how to counsel people about polygenic risk scores, but we will need to learn how to do that in 5 years' time or 3 years' time. So I guess my point is just keep an open mind and know that the field is constantly evolving. So you will have to keep learning even after you graduate, even after you practice. And the last thing I wanted to touch upon was one thing that I really struggled with initially, I don't know if it's the same for you, Kavya, was reflective writing. Because as a science student, that was really not my strong suit. And I had no idea what reflective writing was. So that really took me by surprise. And I think, to sort of have a look into that, because especially in Australia, reflective writing and reflective practice is a huge thing for genetic counselors. Even when you do your certification, there are a lot of reflective writing. So it's very useful to have an idea of what that is and how you can sort of work on your skills in reflective writing and reflective thinking. Yeah.
I think those were very good pieces of advices, really. Okay, so we're done with the questions that we had for both of you. And we've also had the question. Shraddha, why have you raised your hand?
So many.
It's like
Um,
it
I go. Yes.
100%, 100%. One thing that they for us is silence can be very, very powerful. Um, it's it's a skill that I did not have. I like to talk a lot, and it's really one thing that they've really taught me and changed me for the better is allowing the other person to talk and just focus on what they're saying instead of what I want to say next. And just sitting with uncomfortable stuff and just being like, it's okay, no one has to talk. The other person can like just be, and you can also be. The other thing is there are heaps. I can't pick one, but um, also like Quan said, reflective writing helps a lot with understanding who you are as a counselor, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and when you're constantly reflecting, you you pick up on points that you can improve on, and then you consciously try and do that next time. And I think also, just because we see our cohort also counsel because we role play and we have these simulation days where we're seeing other people in our class learning at our level doing that, there are a lot of things you pick up from them. And a lot of times you'll be like, this person is so good at this, I'm going to do it just that way. Or this does not work for me. I know that, so I'm going to not do this. So I think this course has really helped me understand myself better and just direct me into who I want to be as a counselor, as opposed to how a counselor should be. It's really I think with the way the courses are structured for both universities, it's more about finding who you are. And one big thing that they really want you as genetic counselors to do is be yourself and be very genuine. It's a big thing they harp on, like be genuine and be yourself and be authentic. So I think it's allowed me to just own up a little bit more about who I am. I'm gonna let them.
Such a amazing answer. I don't know how to top that. I would say though, I realized that a key difference between the courses in Australia and the courses in, especially in the US/Canada, is that we have a much stronger emphasis on, like you said, reflection and the psychosocial aspect of counseling. I'm not saying that they don't do that at all. I'm just saying that I feel like we focus a lot more. We spend a lot. We spend more time thinking about those things. And I guess to answer your question, like I guess just counseling skills in general. So like, before this, I know obviously like we all know when you talk to someone in distress, you need empathy. But what is empathy? You need active listening, but what is active listening? Things like that. So like, I guess for me, and I'm pretty sure it's the same for Kavya, like as genetic counselors in Australia, we have a framework of competency standards that we abide to, and it's like something like 1.1 to 13.4 or something. And these are really, really, I won't say minute, but really specific skills, such as, giving your client space to express their emotions. When I say it like that, it sounds really like, like a no-brainer. You want to know how to do that, but how do you actually give your client space to express their emotions? So like really the nuances of all of these counseling skills is what I really got from this course. And I was gonna say something else, but I totally forgot. So I'm just gonna yeah.
When you're working as experienced genetic counselors, we'd love to have you back with that experience as well.
Yes.
We hope so too.
Yeah, and I have to say, I really appreciate what you're doing. I guess for prospective students or genetic counselors out there, because I remember when I was like applying, I wish I had something like this, like just to sort of wrap my head around what is genetic counseling and what is the process like. So I think what you're doing is really important.
100%, 100%. Especially in India, it's so important to have this platform to just because there's so many things going on over there, and especially in terms of research and how fast it's moving. You think they would have caught up with something as important as genetics? When you Google, it's only geneticists and genetic doctors and no genetic counselors. So I think this is awesome, and people will, even if they want to become a geneticist, I've heard from a lot of geneticists here that if they knew about genetic counseling, they might just have shifted and become genetic counselors. So I think it's really nice and it's really awesome that you're putting time into this.
Yeah.
That means a lot. And I think we all have that same view that when we were applying, when we first started off, if we had something like this to connect with ourselves, we might have just had just a better insight into genetic counseling and just how to go about it. Okay, so I think that's all from our side.
Are there any questions that you guys want us to answer more? You can me, I won't say for I'm happy to get back to you guys. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think thank you so much, Kavya and Quan, for joining us and answering our questions. It was great to know about your journey as genetic counseling students, and I think as a practicing genetic counseling in counselor in India, it did resonate with me that it is a growing field in India, and there are good takeaways from today's session for me as a genetic counselor. And I'm sure students who might be watching this and are interested in pursuing genetic counseling in Australia will get insights how to go ahead with the Australian process. Thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you so much for having us.
Likewise. Thank you.
All right. So have a good weekend and good night to both of you.
Yes,
Thank
have
Yeah.
a
you.
good
You
weekend.
too. Bye.
Bye.